Okay, we'll get going here. Let me get this invitation posted over here in the announcements, and it'll take me a bit of a minute. We'll get rolling. Okay. Thanks for being patient there. Now, just to kind of keep us on track where we are, we're still in week 1, and I want to pop down the modules, and we've got a couple of topics that we're going to be covering. We've had somebody join us. Good. Data warehouse, that concept and the architecture of them, and I have just a map there, and I have a couple of other things. I will either cover them today or probably on when I do the I'll do a supplemental lab session for everybody. The thing I wanted to point out with this is this map is interesting, but as everybody knows, we have that terrible tragedy that's occurred there in Houston, and one of the ways that a database, for example, has become of great use to people is that when folks are out there and all the visible landmarks are gone, the street signs are gone, you literally don't know where people are, and the only way they find them is if they call them and they take their cell phone number and convert it to a GPS, convert it through GPS software to a location so they can find them. And so that's one of those uses of databases that really literally saving people's lives. So that's using the global positioning system, and you're going to hear people talk about that global positioning systems versus GIS, which is Geographic Information System. A Geographic Information System is a specific system set up using GPS data for some particular purpose. And there's programming code that's written that people can develop to create a map, topographical map, a map of streets, etc. And I want to show you it's the product of some of this. And while it certainly doesn't at all even rank close to what's happened there in Houston and in Southwest Louisiana, I saw how valuable these are when I went through the tornado and recovery in 2013 and more, and we used database information because when you go in neighborhoods, everything's flattened. There was no street sign, nothing. Nobody knew where anything was. And one of the first things the city government did was they had been wise enough to make everybody who had a shelter, when you bought a shelter, you had to register with the city. And they did that. And so as they were going through, they were recovering people who often would buy one of these shelters that were in the bottom of a garage. And guess what? The entire house would be piled on it. And you're not going to last that much. You're not going to last too long in that kind of situation. Or people who were in standing shelters, but that was one of those ways that a database and having that got those people out and saved their lives. So this tool is not just something used to make money, but it's something that's of some great value. One of the things we did there at the church is we tried to reunite people. We were kind of a triage station for things, and we'd have people who'd call in and we'd get their information. And my Aunt Nellie lived in so and so and so and so, or my mom, or I'm trying to find, and we would literally have to go out and try to go out and see what was there, if the house was standing or anything was left, and then try to track those people down. And as we did it, we worked through that process. And it was a really cool thing to have people who called in from somewhere across the country, and we could find their relative, find out if they were in a shelter, they were staying with somebody, that type of thing. We also used it to catalog, to inventory everything that came in. You would not believe, people in the United States are the most generous people in the entire world, and and I've got some resources there for you to look at, but within 2 hours of that event, the Baptist General Convention, their disaster relief people were already set up distributing food, distributing packets, etc. And they beat everybody, and they were out in the parking lot as people were streaming in, and eventually the parking lots of our church were filled with insurance companies. FEMA was there, the state, all of those different people. And so we created a map to get people around the church, and we literally set up things in the first floor of our church so that as people came in, they could get what they needed. And the folks at Walmart were really very helpful, because they've been through so many of these kinds of things that they pretty much said, here's what you'll need the first few days, what people want the second. And so they just had this list of stuff. And so we knew people were, first thing people would come in that situation, they were looking for heavy shoes, flashlights, power equipment, saws, anything to get debris moved, to find things or etc. So what you're seeing happen there with Harvey and the rescue efforts that are ongoing would not be possible if people didn't have databases. I want to show you just some of the dramatic ones. In fact, this interactive map, as you can see, this is really a database using it's a mapping database, and using literally a series of PowerPoints that flow through with little pop-ups that will tell you the kinds of things that people are reporting, the cries that are going on for help out there. And again, with mapping, you could see the clusters of where things are going, and it gives you a sense of of how bad things are. So the folks there who are trying to do relief effort are doing their very best to make sure, and I'm certain that probably in their headquarters they have a GPS map laid out so that when they go for a request for help into a particular neighborhood, they go through everywhere. So these are tools that we don't just use to make money. They're also tools that can do a great good, and I can guarantee you that things like GPS are exceptionally valuable when you're in some countries where maybe they don't have some of the emerging world countries trying to find people. Often the only way you do is you find them through a cell phone, and then you take that and convert it to GPS. So there's a lot of mapping there. Weather Channel, you can see a lot of the stuff they're doing there. And one of the things that occurred is they had so much rainfall, they had to come up with a brand new color to track that, because they utilize, this is using more of like a spot map or pinpoint. If you go to the Weather Channel, you'll see what they're in that. Again, they were operating off of a database. And this is not at all to make light, but to show you how this tool is so important and helpful. They do a lot of use of what we would call a thermal. And we'll let those pop up there for just a second. You can see here, this, when we talk about a thermal map, okay, what we're talking about is you can see the different colors that represent the level of intensity of the precipitation, and then you can obviously see the clouds. And again, that's just a very typical thing. So when you've ever worked in Excel, or we've gone through a case and we've used conditional formatting, that's the same technique that they use there in those maps to get our eyes trained on what the heaviest precipitation, etc. So there's a lot of practical applications of these things, and I want to make sure that you are aware of them. Now, I'm going to go back here for just a second, and this notion of a data warehouse is of great use to us for a very simple reason. First of all, it allows us to understand, really what it does is it forces us to understand a couple of things. One, what are the key attributes or key characteristics or factors involving our customers, our products and service bundle, and transactions? And you'll see that in some of these databases that we've got. Now, before I go any further, if you'll go over to the announcements section, I want to show you something over there, okay? I have an announcement there in terms of the uploads. Now, you have 4 access workshops that are coming up, okay? And let's click on that for just a second. And I list those, okay, and I tell you where they are. Now, access workshop 1, okay, to upload for that, that's the data warehouse file, and that's in that files section of Canvas. In the Rockoff files, in that zip file, you'll find it there. Then I have a second one, and we'll look at it, which is an export from to Excel. And then the third is another export from to Excel, and then the fourth is the sales database. So those are the 4 files, and I tell you where they are so that you know when they're coming. And just to kind of get you acclimated, okay, as you scroll down in the syllabus area, you're going to see you've got those for 1, 2, 3, 4 access workshop from T2. Text 2 is the Rockoff text, and upload those here. So that's where to find them, okay? So there's no confusion. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at a data warehouse, and then we'll look at a sales database, and we have a couple of exports of those. And again, this textbook is to introduce us to the idea or the conceptual notion, the idea of data warehouses and how we use them. But it also has some valuable material that covers on how I take that database and I do something with the information. A database is designed to collect stuff, categorize it, and like I said, it forces us to identify key attributes or variables, customers, clients, etc., key attributes or variables linked to product service bundles, and key aspects or at least some kind of chronology involving transactions. And that forces us to think, how does that happen? So a database gets created only after there's been some serious thought about, okay, what is it that we want to collect? So you'll have that information, there, and we'll talk about those a little bit. Let's go into the files for just a minute, okay, in that section. And we'll go down here and we're going to find the Rockoff files. And if you're wanting to know what we're working with, we started off, okay, working in this textbook, okay. We worked our way through Appendix B, all right. Today we're going to work a little bit with Chapter 16, which strangely enough works with Excel pivot tables, okay. And you'll notice that over there in those files that we have this fact sales table, an export. So let's go over back here to the data warehouse, to the Rockoff files, excuse me, and I want to open those up again, okay? And here they are, and this is a zip file, and as I mentioned before, it'll probably be faster for you to download the thing. Okay, and then open that up, and you'll see the data warehouse file, and then you'll see the sales database, okay? Just to kind of refresh our memory, let's open up the data warehouse file for just a moment. And so go ahead and click. And I assume everybody knows now how to get into Access and all that business using the VMware, right? Okay, good, because that seemed to be a major issue. Again, in terms of a database, pardon me, a data warehouse, okay, the whole idea is I collect data from different databases, or if I'm going to, or the warehouse is kind of a model or a schema for what kind of information I'm trying to collect, okay? Because ultimately we want to use this. All IT is ultimately designed to be decision centric, stuff I can use to make decisions. And if you look at that, we have the all access objects. You'll notice we have that dim, okay, and that DIM, that's old school kind of naming of a file. But what it says is this is a dimension. And the best way I know to illustrate that is, remember when we talked about the analytical cube and those factors or dimensions or variables. And so this company has some they've identified that are important for them. Channel, okay, the marketing channel, the customer, the product, the salesperson, the type of sales involved. They have a chronology built in, that's the time. And then you have production categories and production channels, customers. Those are production files that we use to pour into the fact sales table, which is the heart of everything. And click on fact sales for just a second, okay? And this table basically tells us in a very summary fashion, okay, the sales that occurred and what customer and the channel and the salesperson and the idea of the product and the type of sale and the line price, line cost, the order number. Okay, so this is a list of sales. Okay, now I'm going to close this for just a second and let's click on this thing called database tools. Okay, and then click on the relationships. Okay, we don't have any relationships built up in this table, okay, for a simple reason. We're not linking them table by table. We're not linking them up, as we're going to see in some other tables as we work. Instead, what we're doing is we're pulling queries to get that information. Now, if I want to know what's going on with the database, and this is a good time to talk about it, there are a couple of other things there in the database toolbar that I want to bring to your attention. The relationships, we've looked at that before, so that's not a big deal. There's also a thing called a database documenter, which is really nothing more than a report that shows you the entities, i.e. the objects that are there and what they're related to, okay? And that's over in that database documenter. Then you have object dependencies, and that's kind of like breadcrumbs that let us track, okay, I have a table, is anything dependent on it, and what is it dependent upon? So we can kind of see the flow of data or the flow of information, okay? Now, here's the thing. A lot of this stuff, you need to understand it and know it for a simple reason, so you can communicate effectively with your IT people, okay? As you move up, you own a company or you move up further up the ladder, if you work for a big firm, you're going to have the capacity to interact effectively with functional specialists and to a certain extent speak their language, understand what they're talking about. So when we're in here in Access working like we are, okay, I'm using Access, so we get to see and do basically almost everything a database administrator does. Most of the time for you, your permission levels and your involvement will be at a query stage or a dashboard report stage or some combination of the two of them. But it helps you to see, okay, when we kind of lift the hood of the thing and see what's under there. Now, if you look here, we're gonna come down and you'll see we've got some queries in this table, okay? And again, we have a couple of these append orders and append returns. This lets us append data, add to the orders table or the returns. Then we have queries used to create a channel. Now you say, why couldn't I just go ahead and do that using the GUI? Click create and then table, and you could. All right. And most databases now are designed to let administrators work at an object or oriented level using icons like what we're doing here. And underneath each of these icons is thousands of lines of code but we see it represented in the form of an icon. And here are some we're creating. And here is a key query. And let's open up. This is the data warehouse. Okay. And so all these other tables and queries support this. This data warehouse is the list. This is a list of all of our transactions and everything involved in it. Okay. Now, as I said before, just like you wouldn't use a hammer to polish your car, you don't want to use a database technology to try to do some heavy lifting, which is why I chose the text I did, because it's more realistic. Typically what will happen is you're going to pull some stuff out of a database at your company and throw it into Excel. If you're lucky and you work for somebody that can afford SAS or SAP or Oracle system, then you'll have a product that kind of combines the two of them. But here, if I were given this and I were asked to analyze it, I can tell you right now, the first place I'm going to do this is I'm going to export it and I'm going to put it into a pivot table. Well, let's diminish this down for just a second, okay? And let's diminish this other down, and let's go down in here into the export file. And again, let me pop back up here, the announcements area, and we're going to look for this fact sales access workshop 2 export. So let's go back down to the file and look for that, and we could fact and there it is. Let's open that file up. Pardon me. Yep, I don't want to render it. I want to download it. And this is an exported file. We'll download it. Okay.
How do you say you open up the Microsoft apps?
Okay. You want to click on the VMware. You see the little thing for VMware up there? Okay. Click on it, and it should ask you for a password. Did it ask you for a password?
Yes.
Now, that's your machine. So put in your machine number, which is H25. Click OK. And then you should get a little thing that shows Computer Lab up in the left corner.
Well, mine said that password is okay.
Huh?
Oh, you put your ID?
Did it work with your ID? Yes. The file that I just called it's right here at the top. It's fact sales AW2 export, and that's okay. This is that fact table that was in the database, and we just exported it into Excel. Did you get in? Because you're supposed to be able to click on that VMware, put in the machine number, and then you have a little thing that shows a Computer Lab pop up, and you click on that, and then the programs will be over there in the start area.
Username or bad password? Is it your ID and birthday?
You know when it shows like change password, old password?
Yeah.
For the old password, it's the number of the new password.
Really? Well, it's not, it asked me that earlier, but now it's not asking me. Now it's just saying.
Who else is having trouble getting in? Okay.
So exit that little box.
Like this one.
And then click on
Yeah. And then below in the password, if it's not recognizing what they told us at ISS is this. In the bottom, put the machine number, which is H25. Okay? So you see the username is H25?
Yeah.
Take that out and put in H25 right below it.
Yeah, right here.
Click OK. And
Must be
click that.
changed.
Click login.
So now I did. Well, it said password must be changed.
it.
That's so
Okay.
weird.
What's going on is this: the university is they have a virtual lab set up, and so they're making you go through a server to filter you, and then that takes you to the virtual lab where you have Office 365 in the lab. Now, if you look there in the programs thing, what you should see is the program at the start. Click all programs, and you should see access and all the different products. You there? Nope. Yeah, everybody?
Yeah, bringing them in.
No?
We're not down there for every computer.
Now, you don't have, you have access to, okay, diminish this down. And let's do, diminish the whole system. Now,
Let's say Excel.
so over here, is the VMware. All right, we're on. And put in your machine number. Try it by yourself. Not in this is where you want to do the password. But that's what is the new password supposed to be? This is
Your
a
ID
new
number.
Huh?
Your ID number.
Yeah, and the old password was what? I guess.
H20.
Yeah, okay. So you got to put in your ID number now. They didn't tell us this. And then you should get a little computer thing, little brown with computer.
And then in the chat. Your screen is broken. Access settings.
Anybody else have a problem? You guys have decided. Look on computer lab.
Yeah, you can do private chat. Or you can do chat.
Yeah. Anybody else having problems? It has to go through a prepare your desktop routine. While you're doing that, I can show you, and of course I'm recording this, so you're not gonna really miss anything anyway. But look, I'm gonna click enable editing. All right, I'm not gonna save it. This is the file you'll turn in for Access Workshop 2. Now, what are we doing here? Okay, well, what I've done is I took that table, okay, the fact sales table, and I exported it into Excel. Why would I do that? Well, it's probably going to be easier for me, okay, to work with this using a pivot table than it is trying to write queries or run queries and all that business in Access. So if you're saying, well, what chapter is linked to this Access Workshop number 2? It's chapter 16, where the author talks about using Excel pivot. Did you get in? Okay. Now, the whole idea is this. Again, use a database for a database. Use a spreadsheet for a spreadsheet, and you kind of get the best of both worlds when you use a pivot table. So let's do this. Click on cell. Click on cell A1. Okay, let's highlight cell A1 over all the way down to I36. Okay? Yes. I'm sorry. It's fact. It's fact sales AW2 export. And if you get confused, I've got them listed in. We're working on Access Workshop 2, and I've got them listed over there in the announcements. It's called fact sales AW2 export. What we did is we took the fact sales table, okay, and export it. And you know how to export. You just click on, if you've got a query that you've run or a table, and you just right click it and you send it to, you export it to Excel. And then you save it where we want to. Okay. The whole idea though is to get it into a medium or into a tool where we can work with it. Okay. So I'm going to highlight this whole area, and then I'm going to click insert. Okay. Pivot table. And it will give me a table range. And I always want to make sure I'm going to put it into a new worksheet. Okay. With me so far? I'll click OK, and I'll get the pivot table field on the right, and I'll kind of get what I call the kitchen sink on the top, on the left. Now, the reason I prefer this for you, if you're going to do some heavy lifting, especially if you're going to do work with some data, let me stop for a minute. We call that table a fact table because it creates facts. A fact is something that I can measure or count. Okay, a dimension is a qualitative kind of thing. Okay. A fact is a sale that occurred on November the 11th at 5 p.m. They bought X, Y, and Z from so-and-so. So a fact sales this could be contacts with people. This could be someone we can link to phone calls, clicks on our website, sales, whatever. But it's typically something transactional that a fact occurred. That's why we call it a fact table. Okay. And facts are things we can measure, count, etc. So since we're working with that type of data, okay, then we'll have some measures in there. All right, we'll want to try to do some more. We'll want to put it over here where we can work with it. And let's look at this for a moment. Now we've got this thing called fact sales. Okay, we'll go back there. That's that table. And if I wanted to, if I was interested in order by order, okay, the difference between the line price and the line cost, it's simple. There in column J, K, or whatever, I just create a formula where I subtract the line cost from the line price, and I could call that line net, and I've got it done. And I just drag and drop it. And then I could put that in a table. I could use a thermal on it, whatever I chose to do. It's just, but to write the query to generate the expression is a little bit different critter. You with me? So again, we want to put it. If I'm interested in, say, I want to do the what's the average net between the line price, what's the average line price? What's the average line cost? Okay. That's going to be a lot easier to work with in Excel. The limitation on Excel is going to be the number of cases it can handle, and you got to be handling a ton of cases before it stops, or what we would call a row. Okay, and so we're going to flip back over here to sheet number 1. Okay, and we can do a little bit of work. So let's take sales date. Okay. Everybody with me? And I'm going to take sales date, and I'm going to pivot table, and I'm going to put the date into rows. And I've got them in rows because it's just one of the things I have to be mindful of, especially if I'm doing it on the fly, like I'm in a meeting, or I want to create, say, a print screen of this, okay, or whatever is a visual acuity. I want to make certain that I don't overcrowd the visual area. So I went ahead and notice what I did here. In the rows, I chose sales date. In a pivot table, you see the if you look, you'll see the filters, the columns, the rows, the values. Think of it like this. The filters, a big window. Then you have rows, and then you have columns, and then the intersection of those are values. Got me? So if I'm interested in the line price, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put it into the values. Okay, and it gives me the sum of the line prices for that day. Now, if the price is a revenue, then that would be my revenue for those given days that are listed there. The thing that makes a pivot table so effective for us is this. If you click on this little arrow, and the author talks about that here in chapter 16 in his book, I can choose what we call the value field settings. Okay? And the value field settings let me express these data, and I can put them in terms of a sum. I can get an average. I can get the standard deviation. I can get the variance. So I can do some heavy lifting statistically if I want to do that. All right. And that's why I chose this text, because he really gives you more of a sense of the practical. Now, I know this. There are people who work at companies that they'll have like SAS, or they'll have SAP or Oracle, which are the top of the line, that are supposed to be able to give you the benefits of a database and a spreadsheet, but who are more comfortable in downloading their stuff and dumping it in Excel and working with Excel because that's what they're used to, and that's okay. As I said before, the only thing that really is a limitation on Excel is the number of records it handles. Okay, so it's going to be a while before somebody comes up with a product that is so intuitive and such a nice blend. Now, there is a product out there, and you'll want to go and play with it a little bit. It's called Tableau, okay? And the reason I like it is not only does it has a characteristics of a database, has a characteristics of a spreadsheet, but it also lets you do mapping of data, okay? Lets you create maps. And I can tell you this, we're undergoing just an enormous revolution in terms of mapping and mapping technology. And the reason is because we've got computing that happens everywhere. We've got chips embedded in products, we've got them in cars, on and on. And so we can look at things on from a spatial basis. And I'll go back here for just a moment. I'm going to go bring my browser back up, okay? And I'm going to go back over here to the New York Times. Okay, and I'm going to click on this. Okay. Now notice what you and I are getting here. We're getting a timeline of requests for help with pop-ups, etc. So we can see by the hour and by the day the kinds of requests that are coming in. And he said, well, why would you care about that? Well, number one, people who've been through hurricanes before know there's a profile. They can pretty much, they have profiles. They pretty much know the neighborhoods where people will not leave because they're too old or just too stubborn, or they wait till the last minute and then they get trapped. Hurricanes are the tricky. A tornado comes, it's coming. Okay, boom, it's over. A storm, a hurricane is one of these events. I've been through one where about 4 days out, they start, I think a tornado's coming, and then you'll hear the chatter. Everybody's going, oh, maybe not. I missed this 3 years ago. And so there's all this. While the authorities are going, it will be bad if you stay. and then you have inevitably young people your age, maybe people my age, who say, let's have a hurricane party. Okay, not smart, stupid thing to do, but they will do it so they can say, I lived through the hurricane, I lived through Katrina, and I was in the party. And there's some people, I went to 4 parties, best of luck, I guess if you got a fly boat and you got a helmet and guns and everything, you can get through, but otherwise it gets pretty creepy, because when that water comes up, what happens is those rivers empty, and every water moccasin, huge spider, nasty critter, a squirrel that's got rabies, etc., they head for high ground, and guess where you are? High ground. So you keep insecticide and everything else, but this is to show a pattern of where all these calls are coming in from, and also to help organize the data. So again, you want to put the tool, and they've got a database here, and then they've taken this thing and converted it into a series of PowerPoints, so you can see that. And I'm not at all making light. I'm trying to show you so we can understand. And these slides will be looked over and over and over as people try to analyze what happened. Now, on the rescue end, okay, one of the interesting things, and I learned this when we went through the tornado and more, is Walmart is a fantastic. They have a fantastic MIS. And they called us and said, here's what people will need on day 1, day 2, and boy, they were right. and it was really helpful to us. But they had been through enough of these, and they've been through enough of these that they start loading the trucks up for relief efforts before the things hit, because they've used this technology to help them understand. Well, that being said, okay, let's go back here, and we've got the fact sales table, okay, and you can see I can express these data, and it's just a more familiar environment. Now I've got the sum of the line price, okay, and then I'm going to do this. I'm going to look at customer ID, and I'm going to put it into the columns. Now I can see what revenue is generated by which customer. You follow me? So now I know by date and by customer the revenue that's been generated, assuming that the line price is the revenue. And again, this is using the techniques of a database. It runs a query, but it's in an area, it's in an environment that's familiar to you and me. Okay. Now, if I really want to, I can do this. I can use some conditional formatting. What I will usually do, and you'll do this when you go to work, is I'll come in and I'll highlight these up, and I'll put borders around them so I have visual acuity with everything. Okay. And then I might come over here to the grand total and run a thermal, and that's going to be a color. I use thermals a lot more than I used to when it dawned on me that rather than building a chart, people are used to seeing this on the weather. Okay, and they'll always show you, you know, here's the heaviest rain or the heaviest winds, and the stuff. Oklahoma is the mecca for weather stuff. And I'm a weather junkie, so you know I'm living a dream because all the 3D stuff they have now is just unbelievable. The tornado chasing. I want to do that, and I cannot get them. And one of the people, Nick Smith, lives down the street from me, and I keep bugging him, let me go with you. No, I can't. Insurance. I think what fun that would be to go track a tornado. That would be cool. But I'm a little crazy. But nonetheless, I can do some charting if I want to. I could insert a pivot chart, but I can just simply use a thermal if I wish. The other thing about this, and I'm going to go ahead and back out of this, is if I want with conditional formatting, I can create rules on highlighting cells, okay, and which means I could go in here into the interior of this table and look for a particular number or greater than, lesser than, whatever. And if you click on, you see them, greater than, lesser than, between, and this lets me evaluate these on the basis of some decision rule. Okay? So that's essentially what we're doing with this. And again, we just took the fact table and we exported it. Now, just so that we'll have a comfort level and you're not sitting there nodding your head and go, oh yeah, I understand how to do that. Let's go back over here to the files, okay? And let's just go back to the files section, and let's go back to the Rockoff, because the Rockoff down here has the zip files, and so we'll go back to it. Okay, here they are, the Rockoff zip files. Rockoff is text number 2. We're going to download it, and then we'll open this up. Okay, and I'm going to open up the data warehouse. Okay, and I'm going to open that jewel up. Now I do probably want to just go ahead and save it to my desktop, but we're just playing. When you get ready to turn it in, those files, download them to the desktop so they're native environment, save them, and then load them back up where they need to be loaded. Otherwise, you'll get caught in the system and all its craziness. Now, I'm going to come down here, and I've got this query. I've got the sales and the fact sales, and I want to open up the DW sales of data warehouse again. Okay, and this is again has that whole chronology of everything. And if I want to export it, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to right-click, export. Okay, and notice I can send it to a number of places. I could send it to SharePoint, which is Microsoft Office's kind of baby server environment. I could throw it into an RTF file. I could put it into a PDF. I could throw it into into an Access table. I can export it into Excel, and away we go. And I can import stuff from Excel into Access. Okay, so I've got what we call interoperability between them. If you want to see the process there, you click on External Data, and you'll see above I can import or link. Okay, these. You say, oh, when would I use the link? Well, you would want to use the link if you want to have these tables. If you have two tables and you want to have them update each other. Okay, now that's really all there is about it. Now let me say this. Right now, you're looking at me like, this is pretty simple stuff. Trust me, you're ahead of about 9% of the people out there who just don't see this and they don't get it. Okay? The whole idea is to get these data, categorize them, and then get them into a situation where we can do something with them, count them or analyze them, whatever. And again, that's why using exporting them over to Excel is a useful thing. Now, I'm going to open up the Excel file again, okay? And we had done some exports, and I'm going to use the conditional formatting, and I'm going to come down and I'm going to click on highlight cell rules, and I'm going to say it's got to be anything that's greater than 20. Let's call it anything greater than 20 is good. And I'll click that. Okay, and we should get anything that's greater than 20. Let's see, and we'll put that, and I want to get the green fill, and I click OK, and there it is. Now, so, okay, wonderful. What's the big deal? Let's imagine for a moment that instead of having this few number of transactions, you had 500 of them or 1,000 of them, okay? Here's what you could do. You could simply just start to back off and zoom out and look for a pattern. See what we did there? Once I've got that data, I can, if I'm using a large number of cases, the first thing I'll do is I'll back it out so I can look to see, is there, do the data cluster? Is there a pattern? Is there something that looks like they're kind of fitting together? Does that make sense? Now, you don't really see it much with this few cases, okay? But you can look up here, and let me tell you how you do it, okay? And this is, again, it's a data administration course, so you kind of get a sense of how data are to be analyzed. The very first thing you want to do is look horizontally, okay? And then you start to look vertically. And if you look horizontally, you're going to see there on June 6th, we got some serious business going on. The same thing, same story on June 11th, okay? Pardon me, yeah, June 6th and June 7th, excuse me. Then if I start to look vertically, it's simple. I can go down and look at the grand totals, okay? But if I'm seeing some kind of cluster, if I'm seeing a customer, okay, where I'm consistently having green, this is somebody that's important to me. Okay. Now, here's the nice thing about pivot tables. I can mix and match. So I can just, and I can click inside this, I could take this and just move it off. And then I can drag and drop down into this. The filter is like a big frame, again. Then you have columns, then you have rows, and then you have the intersection of those, and those are the values. Okay? And again, the whole idea is to be able to use it to make some kind of decision. And the reason I made this is Access Workshop number 2, chapter 16 in the Rockoff text, and this is the blue text number 2. He gives you in that one chapter about as many skills in using a pivot table as one could ever want. It's a fantastic chapter. And pivot table it really gets you the best of both worlds in terms of a spreadsheet and a database. And I can't emphasize that enough. So we've got that taken care of, and that fact, and that this Excel sheet, the fact sales AW2 export, that's the one you want to upload for Access Workshop 2 that'll be due. Okay. Now let's go back over for a moment and let's take a look at Access. Okay, and let's look at the DW sales table. Okay. Now let's go down and take a look at it and see if we've got what we've got going on in the design view, and you'll see here it's a pretty complex query. Okay. Now what they've done here in this query is they have written SQL, okay, that links these tables together. Now I'm going to move this out for just a moment, and you're going to see how that fact sales table is almost like a junction of all of these different tables, okay? And then we'll talk a little bit about the entity relationships and how they go. Now, again, this is not just pie in the sky stuff. This is of great practical import, because the kind of data you collect about your customer is going to tell you a whole lot about what you can know about them and what you can do for them or with them. And it's the same. And this process is not only just with the sales, but let's say environmental data that you're going to use for strategic planning. And the reason I incorporated this textbook and these exercises on business intelligence is that we use these tools, databases, spreadsheets, okay, to build a dashboard, okay? And that dashboard, we use it to do one of two things or both. One, to just monitor current conditions, what's going on with us. Two, to do that what if analysis. Well, what if we did this or what if we did that, okay? And the other is, and also to collect whatever data we can on to see what's happening in our environment and how that might have an impact on us. Now, if you look at this table, you're going to see that it's using more of like, this is what we would call more of like a star schema, okay? And that's because we've got this table and all of these tables feeding in. Now, if you want to see the code, okay, and we'll click down, go down to the SQL view, and there you be. Oh, help me, Lord. I hear the heavy breathing, and I see the frightened looks. Let's click Control C, and let's go up here to a clean notepad. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to click in here, and so we can see it a little bit better. Now, let me show you something, because first of all, and we're going to be doing some SQL. SQL is what we call a command and control language. Okay, that is, it's very specialized. It's designed just for databases. And once you do it enough, and we'll do them over and over, there'll be a point where you'll go, okay, I see this, I get it. There's nothing really complicated going on here at all. And 99% of all queries are select queries. Now, let me tell you how you read this. Okay, it says select. It says, okay, we're going to grab some stuff. Okay, and I'm going to get dim time. That's the table. The syntax for this is the table's on the left, dot, the field in that table is on the right. Okay? You say that sounds like so-and-so.edu or .com or .net. Yeah. Okay? One of the ways that databases got revolutionized is that we moved from programming using pointers to a literal physical location in a computer to using what we called the view system. And that is the data table. We create a data table and we say that the data are there and only certain people can change that table. But you and I can go in, we can run a query, and we can take a snapshot of that table. And what gets saved is the code. So we don't replicate all this data. So it's such an ingenious thing. And so we save the code, and then when we execute it, boom, just get it again. We take another picture of it. But we don't change the data unless it's necessary to do that. But if it right here, we're going to select from the dim time table, sales date. Then we're getting the fiscal quarter, and then from the sales type dimension table, the sales type. Then from the channel, from the customer, dim customer name. And this is going to continue on. Now we'll see this, and we're going to work through this. You're going to come out here going, oh, this stuff was so simple, and I thought it was scary. You'll see the as right there. This is where we use what we call an alias, where we rename a column to make it more useful or palatable for the end user. Or if we want to hide the table name so we don't have hackers come in and try to play games with us. Now, we select all this stuff, okay, and then the next thing is we've got the from. And notice we're going to get dim customer inner join. And inner join is where we take two tables, A and B, okay, and we take where they match. You'll remember if you took 1123 with me when I told you about dating and marriage. Here's the me, all of me. Here's my sweetie, all of them. And when we date, we get an intersection because I only let them see the very best parts of me. But then the day that we put on the yield ring, and the minister says, and here's and put that ring, and the young lady is there, and she's understanding this is a commitment, and the young man's either thinking about baseball or his heart's pounding so hard he can't hear a thing, and that ring symbolizes eternally, and you have an intersection, which means everything about them and everything about you is now just one big mess. And that's how people who don't think their way through this process wake up one day and go, the person across the table, I'd really like to kill them. Or how did I end up with them? So intersections, inner joins, they're nice. Okay. See, the nice thing is that when salvation is the same process, the Lord says, oh, I'm not just going to take your best. I'll just take you, all of you, what you are, and I'm going to subsume all that. And I'm going to change that. And when we go see the Lord, or when he comes back, boom, he changes, fixes all that. And then heaven just becomes this process where it just gets better and better. That's good news. A lot better news than you'll hear from anything else. Then we have a series of inner joins, and we have the inner join. Notice we have a equal sign there because we're doing a conditional statement. And this will make a lot of sense. It's not that big of a deal. Now, you say, oh, that's, like, I understand, okay? I'm a lazy slug. So I tend to like the design view a lot better. And this is the view you'll be working at, what we also call the design or the graphic user interface view. Because you remember from 1123, I can come in here, I can choose what field I want out of the table. I can put in conditional statements. And for example, let's come down here and look at the criterion for fiscal quarter. And let me go back a minute and see if I can find. Let me go back up here and see if I can find a quarter. And okay, we've got 211 Q2. So let's go back down to the design view, and I want everything out of. Let's see if that gives us sales for 211 Q3. Maybe we'll, maybe won't. We didn't have any sales. Let's try Q2. And it's probably got to be exactly like it. So I'm going to get another empty set. Especially because it improvement. Yeah, it probably does. There we go. That's all the sales. Well, it is Q2. I could come back in and do it by sales date. Let's do this. Go back down to design view and where you've got the Q2. Now every time I'm in here and I mess with this in here, I'm rewriting the code below. But it's just much simpler for me to say, okay, my criteria is I want everything on, let's see, let me find the date up here. And that'd be, 2/11. Okay. I want all the sales that occurred on the 15th of 2011. Okay. And so we got, click OK. And it gives us all those sales. Now go back down and then look and see what's happened there in the criteria. It added the hashtags, the pound signs. Okay. Now I know all of you are used to that. You know, hashtag Kim Kardashian. Yeah, I was born way too early. I want to get a job where I'm famous because I'm famous. I can't do anything. I'm not athletically skilled. I can't sing. I can't dance. I'm not smart. I don't make rockets to go knock out the North Koreans. I'm not as good a barber as Kim Jong-un's. He's cute. He got the haircut going on, doesn't he? He got the hair thing happening. I think he's mad at us because he can't get in to get his hair cut up. What's the place, MVP, you're cutting all that junk and then get whatever. But, okay, well, that hashtag thing. But I'm famous because I'm famous. I don't understand that, okay? Then you got really talented people like, what's the lady's name, Beyonce? Is that her name, Beyonce? Is that what they call her, Beyonce? And then they got that one, Taylor Swift. She's a girl that sued them people. She's all right. She's making big money. She told Apple, you don't play my stuff unless you pay me. And Apple said, okay, we'll pay. Because they sell a lot of her music. Well, nonetheless, what it did was it converted that to a hashtag because dates are nasty little critters that make the computer angry with us because it doesn't know if it is a number or a piece of categorical data. You say, what do you mean? Well, let me give you one, okay? September 25th. Is that a date or a categorical piece of data? For me, it is a piece of categorical data. You know why? Because it's my wedding anniversary. Wasn't I smart long ago to make it 2 weeks after 9/11? That's the only way. And if I miss that date, I'm in trouble. So September 25th passed before, but right. It's like the Three Bears. A little too hot, a little too cold. Okay. So it puts it in the hashtags to convert it to something that it can work with, and it says, okay, you're a unique kind of critter. Well, this whole process now is where we've done a few things here, and I just want to summarize what we've done. We first of all, we know what's due. I always put that in the announcements, so there shouldn't be all these fumbling emails. Okay, I've got that for you. Okay. Number two, we know the Access Workshop number one, we know what that is. And then the second thing was we said, okay, we'll use a database, what it's intended to do, something I can pull data from. And I can pull it via a query, okay? And then I can take that query if I want to, and I can export it into an application where I can do some work with it. Now, for example, I can go ahead and let's take the customer ID, let's take channel ID and put that in columns. And this is internet, okay, mail, and what's P supposed to be? I forget. One's the internet, one's the mail, one's the phone. Okay, so they don't have any TV commercials, and that's going to hurt them. Okay, because you got to be running TV commercials at 2 o'clock in the morning. Those are. Do we have any marketing majors? Okay, you need to be watching those at 2:30 in the morning. You're up anyway. I know you are. You're up watching all those dirty shows or whatever ungodly things you do. Turn over to where these channels where they run a thing, if they're selling you, stuff to cook things or And those are some of the best salespeople. You would not believe the amount of money that they run. That's why they keep running. What's her face? Cindy Crawford has that beauty product thing going on deal. What's the other one? There's another young lady who's an actress or singer. She dated the guy that played for the Cowboys. They've made more money doing that than they did anything else. Because people go, okay, give me a credit card. I'll take 5 of them. I find myself at times, there's a thing, I've seen it, it's a little thing, it's a red thing, and you put your food in it, and it cooks it, fries it, so you can take sandwiches. And I keep telling my wife, we need one of those, we need one of those. Okay. What can I say? All right, so we've seen this process where we take the data, we collect them, we transform them. Now there's one thing missing here from the database, and let's open it, and go back and open it up for just a second. You're going to see we have all the access objects, all right? Okay. We have the tables, we have the queries, we even have a couple of reports. If you scroll down there, you'll see it says a little report. Click on that and open up that report. And it says a beginning date. Let's put 6/1/2011. And put an end date, and let's put 7/1/2011. So I'm going to get a monthly report. Okay, this tells me. Now I just ran what we would call a periodic or regular query, just something. Otherwise, I'm doing what we call a serendipitous query, where I'm saying, well, what about this and this and this, and or is there a connection there between them? And so we've got this report. Now, notice it's in the form of a query. It's not in the form of a report like you're used to seeing when we worked with Access, because we didn't save it as such. We ran a query, okay? And we're linking the tables. Let's open that, click on that, and go down to the design view, okay? And scroll down here, and you're going to see a parameter query. When you go to log in, you use a parameter query, and it will ask you to, your username and a password, because by doing that, it adds exponentially the number of possible combinations that a Russian hacker has to find to get into your stuff. And unfortunately for all of you, you are let's put it like this: if you're in the middle of the ocean, you're like somebody who's bleeding, surrounded by sharks, because those folks love you because you don't have much of a credit history and you're young. And boy, if they can get your identity, they can have a big time with it. And so be careful with your data out there. Please, please, please. Now, here they ask us to do between the beginning date and the ending date, and we see we're going to just draw off this table. Okay. Well, let's go back over for just a second up here to the fact sales, and let's open it up. I'm coming down to the design view. Pardon, not the fact sales table. I want the fact sales. I want the query. I'm sorry. Oh, let's go back here to this. All right. Here we go. Now, if you'll click on one of the lines there, click on one of the lines, and you'll see the join properties, okay? And this is just simply showing you the parent and the child. The parent's on the left, the child's on the right. And this lets us use a drop-down menu if we want to engage in a Boolean operation. Now, here the left table name, and then we've got the column. And notice we're doing an inner join, and it says only include rows where the joined fields from both tables are equal. Okay? Now there's also a thing called a left join, and that would be when I want everything on the left hand, all the stuff in that table, and then where they join. Or a right, where I want everything on the right side, and then just where they intersect. Okay, and those are two strategies, and it just depends on what you're after. And then, as we're going to learn, there's a thing called a union, where we get a lot of duplicate records, and then a thing called a union all, where we delete duplicate records. Well, folks, that's about it for me. Okay, and probably need to get you out of here before the medication kicks in, or the Tourette's. I don't know. I don't know if I took enough day or not. Anyway, God bless you. Okay, and I will be posting a Tuesday, virtual Tuesday thing. Thank you for your time, and have a good one.
Is that printer up? That round?
Oh boy, I don't know. I have no idea if it is. Very sorry. Mhm.
We turned the Excel file, right?
Yeah, I've got the four files listed and the assignments over in the announcements. Yeah, I'll tell you exactly where they are and what you're turning in. Yeah, I think fact sales is number 2, and then I think I've got a geographic or something in 3, and then 4 is where 2 of them are the first and the second, or the first and the fourth are the databases, and then the 2 are the exports in the middle. And we'll look at those. That help? Okay, good.
So we
Mhm.
have to upload the Excel file, right?
Huh?
We have to upload the Excel file.
Yeah, and I've got them over there in the files. Let me diminish this down, and we'll go through it one more time. And again, remember, when you're in these sessions and you ask a question, okay, you're probably 4 or 5 people out there that know you that are ridiculing you. No, I'm kidding. I'm teasing. I'm making a joke. Oh, yeah, click on the announcements area, and you'll see uploads for the 4 access workshops and where they're at. Okay. So if you wanted to make it easier on yourself, what I do is I just copy that and throw it into a notepad, and then yeah, okay. And they are all due. Yes, 14th of September. And you've got an exam coming up the 7th. Okay. All right. Good to know. Yeah, I'll stop the recording.
Up there on my screen. But
Mhm.
page 13 doesn't have any Microsoft Office on it.
Yeah. Okay. On that
Wasn't sure if you were the
on that
person who-
computer,
Yeah.
you were okay. That's right. Let's. You can see this now. Let me do this.